Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the third video in a series where I am sharing my own self-led IFS sessions in my own inner system. So several years ago when I was learning IFS, I would practice on myself whenever there would be a trailhead or something I felt curious about. And I would kind of be in a meditative state and kind of writing with my eyes half open. But I'm really happy that I did that so that I can share it in detail with you. As always, I want to give two disclaimers before I share. One is that this is my personal experience and it's not prescriptive to you. Be curious about your own experience and the way your own parts show up. Mine are often very visual and very vocal. Yours may not be. Some of yours may be, some of them may not be. You may not have any visualization at all of your parts, and that's okay. You're not doing it wrong. Your experience doesn't have to look exactly like mine. The second thing is that I had done about 10 years of inner healing work before I got to this stage, and a lot of self-love and self-compassion. So as I went into these sessions, I had a critical mass, I think, of self-energy. I felt very curious and compassionate and confident. So if you find that you try this and you check in how you're feeling toward the target part, if you are feeling frustrated with it, judgmental toward it, afraid of it, numb, confused, anything that's not calm and confident and curious and compassionate, um, you may need to ask those parts if they'll give you space. And if they can't, you may need to make one of them your target part. So I just want to make sure we always understand that. So this session is working with a part that would make me feel extreme fatigue and exhaustion. Now, again, you're going to hear from this part specifically why it was doing that. But I've had other parts that showed up in kind of similar ways, a collapse part, another part that would give me a certain type of illness that had very different reasons. Okay, so always go into your own system and get curious about why that part of you is doing that for you. All right, so at the time that I did this session, I was regularly experiencing what I would call spells of extreme fatigue, and they would often last 1 to 2 weeks. And there was no real physical explanation for them at all. So I decided just to see if there was a protective part that was causing this exhaustion. So I got still and I asked the fatigued part if it would just show itself to me. And then I waited just patiently and open to whatever revealed itself to me. And I saw this pitch black, it was like an ink cloud right in front of me. And it began to spread and consume me. So I asked it gently if it could step back. And we kind of did this several times. It kept coming toward me to consume me, and I had to keep asking, can you just step back? And I let it know, if you step back, then I can get to know you. I really want to understand you. I want to be able to observe you and get to know you. And so finally, it kind of agreed to kind of be in front of me. And again, I'm just doing kind of whatever feels right or natural to me in that. And so I just asked this fatigue ink cloud, how old do you think I am? Because it kept not wanting to let me, interact with it. And the answer that came very clearly was 27. And I have learned to trust the answers that come. I've gotten everything from 0 infant to 40 something. So, and another thing to say is that I had a lot of trauma in my early adulthood and the abuse of my first marriage. So 27 wasn't that far-fetched. I've also had another part say in my 40s, but I had an acute trauma in my 40s. So it can be any age, just be open. So I said, so I knew that because it thought I was 27, that it was probably protecting a 27-year-old part. So I said, are you protecting uh, someone who's 27? And there seemed to be a yes from the cloud. So I said, can you tell me why you're protecting her? Why does she need protection? Um, and I assumed it was a she, I guess, at that point. The ink cloud said, she's so weak, so weak. She's going to break. She needs help. No one's there to help her. And this is often the case when I just receive answers from parts, from protectors, they feel very desperate. Like their tone is very urgent. Like she needs help. Nobody's helping her. You could hear that kind of in the tone. And at this point, what I felt led to do was to tell the ink cloud that I would put the 27-year-old in a safe space, because it felt like the ink cloud couldn't relate to me because it was so fixated and focused on her. So many of you know, I have my safe space in Tuolumne Meadows in Yosemite. And so in my mind, I said, I'm going to put her there and she's going to be safe there so that you can better see me. So I did that, and the ink cloud seemed to relax just a little. And so I said, I'm 45. Do you see me? So at the time I did this work, I was 45. I said, can you see me? And the ink cloud indicated yes. And then this was really fascinating. When I do this work, I'm always surprised by what happens. I'm not making it up in my mind. It's like I'm watching a movie and it's just appears. So at that point, once it saw that I was 45, there was that black ink cloud, and from behind the ink cloud, or I guess through it, a blue alien creature appeared in front of me, and it had these big kind of antennas with eyes on the ends. But it was blue and alien looking. And I was very surprised, but he looked very friendly. And I also was clear that he was a male. And I said, can you tell me why you feel like you need to make the 27-year-old girl feel weak? I just want to understand. I know that you're doing this for a reason. So the alien said, I make her feel ill so that people have to care for her. They have to see her. They have to stay home. They have to care for her. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I thought, I get that. And I said, she's 27. That means she's pregnant, right? And he nodded. And he said, she's all alone in a foreign country. She doesn't have any family or friends. And her husband is out all day and night. And so I said, are you trying to get her husband's attention so that he'll care for her? And he said, yes. I said, wow, that's a pretty brilliant strategy. That makes sense. And I showed appreciation. I said, I really appreciate your efforts and how you're trying to help her. And I said, I would really like to help her also. How do you feel about that? Is it okay for me to go to the 27-year-old woman and help her? And he said, good luck. And he put it out his little hand to shake my hand, which was funny. But he gave his permission. So at that point, I found myself in the meadow in Yosemite where I had put the 27-year-old pregnant me, part of me. And she looked very worn out. She was folded over. She was in a nightgown. Her hair was very messy. Her eyes were blurry, kind of like she had been crying for a long time. And so I just sat next to her on a rock and she collapsed into me. And so I hugged her and I let her know that I could see her pain. I could see her loneliness. And I said, as the self, oh, sweetie, I see you. I'm here. You don't have anyone, do you? And she nodded as she was sniffling. And I said, but I'm here with you now. I'm here with you. And I asked her if she wanted me to know anything about why she was so distraught. And she grabbed her pregnant belly, and she indicated that because of all the abuse that she had experienced in her marriage and the stress she had been under, that she felt like she had already hurt her baby, and that devastated her. So she just felt very sad and defeated, like there's nothing she could do. And so I hugged her and I helped her co-regulate her breathing with mine. And I said, can we go back to the apartment in Istanbul, Turkey, and just so you can show me what happened? And she agreed. And so we went back and we were sitting in the dining room area in the apartment that my first husband and I shared there. And he had painted it to look like a 50s diner. So there were blues and pinks and black and white checkered floor. And as soon as we got there, her nervous system became extremely overwhelmed again. Like she was just panicked. And so I said, we don't have to be here if you don't want to. I can take you out of here. We can go back to the meadow. And she very much wanted to go back to the meadow. She was not comfortable there. So I kind of preemptively had retrieved her before, but I tried to go back to see if there was anything she wanted to show me. She was very uncomfortable being there, and immediately, I think because she had experienced being in the meadow now, she was like, oh my gosh, please take me back there. So we went back to the meadow, and we were just walking together barefoot on the grass, breathing in the fresh air, smelling the pine trees. And I invited her to sit down, and I massaged her feet, and then I rubbed her shoulders, and I massaged her scalp, and she just felt like she was melting, just resting. And I told her, as the self, I said, I'm going to advocate for you. I'm going to get you help. I'm going to make sure that you're cared for. And I held her hand and squeezed it gently. And I said, if you could do anything you wanted today, what would you want to do? And her eyes lit up and she said, I want to have a spa day, get my hair done, my nails, my feet, my face, everything. So I said, yes, that sounds great. I'm going to pamper you. And she smiled. And we did that. And then at that point, I asked her, what represents your burdens to you? What represents that feeling of being completely alone and uncared for, and that panic that you were having back at the apartment? And she said it was the apartment itself, kind of represented that to her. So I told her that if she wanted, we could abolish it. We could get rid of it using water, wind, fire, earth, or any way that she wanted. And so she indicated that she wanted a tornado to come and destroy the entire building. But she was very clear that she wanted to make sure no one was in the building, that no one was hurt, just the building. And I said, yes, we can do that. And so the tornado was coming. It was about to hit the building. And then she asked if we could take just the apartment, because her first husband had done so much artwork in it and decorating it, that if we could take it and just send it up to heaven. At this point, my first husband had died. Well, when I was 45, he had died. And she had been updated at that point about everything that had happened. And so she was asking if I could just send the apartment up to him, which I thought was a sweet thing to want to do. But she said, but I never ever want to see it again. And I said, yes, that works. You can do anything you want. I said, where would you want to live now? And she said she wanted to live in a cabin in the mountains. She said one like little house on the prairie that's very, very simple. And at this point, I felt like she and and the alien needed a lot of updating about my life. I had updated her a little bit, but I asked her if she wanted, before she went to the cabin, if she wanted to come into my current life just to see everything. Um, I told her, I live in a nice house and it's in a wooded area. I said, we have two children. One of them is the one in your belly right now. And I'm married to a very loving man who cares for me well. And her eyes just lit up like she was shocked. And she said, yes, I would like that. I would like to see everything. And then spontaneously, she said, I really want to be a nurturer, both to myself and to other people. I want to learn how to love myself and how to be content. And I reflected that that was a beautiful intention. I brushed her hair. We did so much during that time. I took her shopping. We bought maternity clothes. I let her rest on the bed and rubbed her back. And it was just a real time of connecting to her, updating her, me being the one who was caring for her. And so eventually I went back to the ink cloud alien and asked him if he saw what had occurred with the 27-year-old pregnant woman. And he was jumping up and down and squeaking, and he gave me a high five. He just had very young, playful energy, which was very kind of opposite, right, to like this ominous, foreboding black ink cloud that he had presented himself as before. And I asked him, I said, having seen that, do you trust that I can take care of the 27-year-old woman and that you don't have to make her feel such fatigue anymore to get people's attention? And he kind of looked sheepish, kind of a little skeptical. And so I said, I can keep meeting with her and I can gain your trust if you want. And he nodded. But again, he was very, very playful. And so I asked him, if I do gain your trust and you don't have to work so hard to get the girl cared for, what would you rather do? And he said he wanted to be a comedian. He said, I want to be the comedian, the joy maker, the lighthearted, funny one, the bouncy, jovial, cuddly one, which I thought was great. I said, I love it. And in that moment, so I had been feeling fatigue for at least a week, I think, before that. And so I immediately felt more energy. I remember feeling much, much lighter in my own body and in my mind after that. So I felt better the rest of that day. And then the next morning, I had some fatigue again. And I immediately knew that there needed to continue to be updating. So I went over and I sat next to my current husband, Brian, on the couch and kind of cuddled up next to him. And he expressed concern and care for my fatigue and affection. And so I smiled and I kind of inwardly contacted the blue alien and I said, do you see? I now have someone who takes care of me. And you can be the comedian now if you want to. And this was one of the most amazing things in my IFS work. Because up until that point, I was feeling that fatigue. And then as soon as I showed the blue alien, you see, I have someone who will care for me without needing to get their attention in that way. I immediately felt better. The fatigue lifted and I didn't feel it again. So yeah, it's fascinating. It was very revolutionary to me to realize that there are parts that can actually activate physical experiences. It's not always that. I always get very curious, right? I'll go toward whatever's happening in my body and ask the parts. And if you've seen my IFS and the Body Compass self-paced course, I give, I think, 16 examples of going toward parts who are using my body. And sometimes it's a very physical root issue. Other times it's a trauma-based issue. Other times it's because they're polarized with parts that push me beyond my physical limits. So then they've got to pull in the other direction, and then other times it's a collapse response because an intense trauma has been triggered that it's really afraid is going to overwhelm the system, right? So every time going in and getting really curious, why are you doing this? But knowing that there's always a reason. And if we can get curious and open, we can get to the root and we can go to the parts that need our attention, or we can attend to whatever the physical root is. So it's just such a valuable process. So I hope you appreciated this example. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and hopefully I'll do the next one next week.